In the dynamic world of e-commerce in Africa, few names shine as brightly as Steven Lamony. Today, New Vision TV sits down with Steven, the Managing Director of Jumia Uganda, a man who rise from humble beginnings to leading a digital revolution in Uganda is a story of great vision and inspiration. As we listen to Steven's journey, it's clear that his foundation was built in the simplicity of a tightly knit family, where values, hard work, and curiosity shaped his dreams. Steven didn't just dream, he acted, turning each step into a leap towards something bigger. Today, Steven's leadership at Jumia Uganda is more than just a business success. It's a blueprint. He has redefined how Ugandans access commerce, and his vision is inspiring a generation of entrepreneurs who see no limits to what they can achieve.
I come from a very strong Christian family, we're raised by our mothers. So unfortunately, my dad passed on earlier on, but very close-knit and loving family, and very disciplined type family. So yes, I grew up around a community of my cousins, and I was quite young actually, because a lot of my cousins are a little older than myself. So I got to be the younger guy in the family at that point in time. This was, I think, in the 90s in Bugolobi. Very interesting neighborhood, the flats. Yeah. Lots of kids. We played outside. Yeah, we really played outside. And then, later on, I also went to boarding school quite early, by the way. I think this is one of the things that I say fundamentally shaped and accelerated my journey, because then I really stepped up and became quite independent. I could take care of myself by the time I was in P5. And it was a tough environment, but I began to adapt. Then I move on into my O and A levels. Again, the fears of adolescence. But I studied economics at the university. I've always been inclined towards technology. And economics is really broad, all right? So you'd imagine technology, economics, but we'll get to that. So after university, I started off my career in banking. And banking really gave me, I'd say, a hard landing to just get out of the theoretical understanding of what the work world looked like into a very highly pressured, highly structured type of environment. And I enjoyed that. I did a few graduate training programs. It really accelerated my understanding of the corporate world. And then, eventually, I became a bit bored. That time we still had the millennials in the workplace. This was, how you say the Gen Zs now. And, it was this kind of attitude towards, millennials, global village, they did not want to settle. They want to grow a lot faster. And the workplace was very traditional. And I enjoyed it, but I could see that there were a lot of limitations with the kind of environment in which I was working in the bank. But I acquired a lot of skills, especially around business intelligence. So I moved from doing sales roles into business analytics, and that's where really I started to get my footing. Because of eagerness, I figured it was about time. And I'd been seeing this organization, Jumia, with all this excitement, young people, very vibrant type organization. And I felt that I wanted an organization in which my voice could be heard. And I felt that my contribution would be a lot, it would be immense. And I felt that Jumia was the right place for me to join. So I joined Jumia in, I think it was July of 2019, in the business intelligence or revenue management function. And it was a totally different environment, unstructured, young people. And the environment was, was young, very dynamic, a lot of excitement, different kind of work culture. And so I joined, and I was excited to join. And over the years, then I began to progress. So I did the role that I was doing, I think, for about 4 years. So a lot to do with business intelligence, so understanding trends in the market, working with suppliers to make sure that we get all the products that we see in the offline market, benchmarking our pricing, against what the market was selling. And so it gave me a lot of perspective and also was able to grow me. Then I did transition into what we call the Chief Commercial Officer role. And again, like I said, one of the reasons why I came into this type of organization is because I felt that, merit could easily be rewarded. And it was, very, very, very fast and dynamic. So I felt that for the pace that I was looking for, I stood a chance of growing in here. So I went to the Chief Commercial Officer role, and that was also quite interesting because it really, again, upgraded me into, a very strong leadership position where I had to take charge of the commercial business and steer it into hyper growth. Yeah, and then eventually, as the universe would have it, I moved on into the Managing Director role. I've been doing this for close to a year now. Lots of challenges, but also a lot of perspective. And to be honest, I've really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to what the future holds for Jumia. I've always had, like I said, an inclination towards technology. I loved computers. And I remember my cousin had a computer and it had this green background, right? It was a very big desktop type screen with, those bigger ones that looked at the old TVs with a green transparent background. And we used to play, I don't remember those games, but those shooting games with the planes and all that. And I just loved computers. Every time I had an opportunity, he's an architect, I would just say, hey man, I need 15, 25 minutes on your computer to just see what I can learn of this kind of machine. So my inclination was towards that, and at that point in time, I just wanted to spend time, with computers and, understand, get into a bit of coding, and, just my love was in that. Anyway, as time would have it, eventually, yes, I continued my education, went to the university, entered into economics, and I just kept building on my interest. So I don't think by surprise I got into this kind of environment. What you love sort of from your childhood becomes sort of the background of what you want to eventually do, and you constantly look for that type of environment. So I know that my build up into, I'd call this a tech space because in a sense, Jumia also is a technology company. And I think luckily is that, the world has taken that direction. Yeah, so I think opportunity and passion somehow sort of decided to meet and formed a career for me. If I was to say what I would have been outside of this, directionally, I was very interested in science. This has always been something that fascinated me. From a young age as well, I was really interested in experiments and, playing around, with animals. Actually, when we were in O-level, one of the things we used to fight to enter into the laboratory, the science laboratory. That used to be very exciting. I don't know, man. Maybe these days things are totally different. Yeah, so I'd not say I had a lot of pressure. I think they also let me find my own footing. Not very conventional. Of course, my cousins, my siblings, took their own paths. One who I really look up to went into architecture. My sister went into surveying. So they let me really take my own path. Again, as I said, when adolescence got me, I think they figured let the guy find his footing, and wherever he lands, I think he'll find his way. So I ended up where I ended up. So Jumia, I keep thinking of Jumia as a rocket ship. But for starters, man, Jumia had vibrant parties. And you would see them. So yeah, because, associations, a few of the people, my friends, I think had already worked in the organization. And it just looked like this is a totally different organization from the traditional background that I was coming from. So it was, again, like a lot of young people, very forward-thinking environment, to be honest. At the time, they also had a very young leader. And I found that impressive. And that, for me, when I looked at the world, this is the age of, Facebook, all these young global entrepreneurs, and you're asking yourself, how come this is not being replicated in a market like Uganda or in Africa, for that matter? So Jumia had young energy, very vibrant energy. And again, because the tech space, I would say, was taking off, or at least you could start to interact with a lot of people, worldwide, who are really building careers, within the tech space. So for me, Jumia was a rocket ship. It just looked like it wanted to launch, and it was just at the opportune time in the market. So when I weighed my options, and like I said, one of the things that I didn't like about the traditional workspace is the hierarchy. My voice was getting lost. I didn't feel that I could express myself. I felt I could add value for sure, but it just felt like a very traditional type environment that you'd have to serve your years, you have to listen to, the guys at the top. The guys at the top really looked far. So I said, no, I think let me bet and see what happens outside of here, where I can really pronounce myself, and where I thought I had a chance of, going to the top. You'd actually imagine that when I told because at the time I told my mom I'm going to move from the bank. That time it was Barclays. I said, no, I'm going to move from the bank into this organization. It was totally unheard of to her. I said, what? How do you want to transition from stability into, you have no idea where this is going? I said, look, it's true. I have no idea where this is going, but I want to bet. I want to get into a space where, it's changing. It's changing, and I feel that the reward, the upside could also be really great. The downside could also be really great, by the way, because if it didn't take that direction, it would be, a very big downside, and it would actually have had a toll on me. But the other thing as well is, I could take, when you're a lot younger, you can also take that type of decision because you know that you can easily bounce back. So if you get into a place and it doesn't work out, you tried, you've given it a shot, and if it doesn't work out, you can always bounce back and go into another place. I'm not saying you can't do it when you're older, but then obligations and responsibility are going to limit you. But again, like I said, for me, the rocket ship and the energy around the organization, again, I felt it was opportune. And I could see that if I looked at it just from my perspective. By the way, before I joined Jumia, I used Jumia, very importantly. And exactly, I used it and I experienced it. And I asked myself, how are these guys pulling off this model? So I was already curious about the organization. I remember the very first item that I bought was a cooker, a blue flame cooker. So I used it and it was delivered home, and I was like, whoa, this thing actually works. And the pricing was very, very good. I was like, how are these guys pulling this off?
You didn't expect that.
Exactly. And it was very convenient for me. So I figured, I was like, okay, this is interesting. And I didn't even think that they would be, because, I think at the time they also still gave me the option to pay on delivery. So I was not worried. There was no loss for me. If they didn't bring it, I'd be like, okay, well and good. These guys don't work, but they brought it, delivered it. The guy carried it, put it inside, and it was legit. So I was really happy. I said, okay, this company actually works. So I could see that for my lifestyle at the time, because, I do not want to go into the shops and start to haggle. I did not want to go into the supermarket where I could not afford and, look at the cook and I cannot afford it and just say, okay, well, when the money adds up, I will. So for my lifestyle, I felt that it fitted. So I also used myself as a subject to say, where would this go for me as a customer? And where would this go for the organization as well? It was a culture shock for me because I came from, again, a bit, of a background that, the open door policy maybe existed, but more in, more in theory than practically, because you saw leaders as, very elevated, in that field. And then also your opinions had to go through that hierarchical structure, which you'd hold on to, tell your boss to tell the other guy that this is what my recommendation is. So I felt that it was holding me back. So when I came to Jumia, I found that, again, this kind of vibrant culture. Another shock was, okay, maybe the time that the people used to come to work, which I didn't really like, because I found that people could treat the workplace with a lot more respect. That has changed over the years anyway. But yeah, these were totally different environments to me, exactly different worlds. But what I totally liked was the pace. The pace was crazy, and the belief. You would not believe the kind of people that were working with at that time. You imagine just these young 20-year-olds walking into your office, and you're this big brand, and these guys are pitching to you how you can list your product, and we shall sell it, and then we'll pay you after 2 weeks. And that's daring, very daring. Like when the brands I saw that we started to work with, and how we used to pitch to them, it was very daring, because seeing and saying, how many items do you even sell in a week for you to walk into my office and tell me that you want me to list my product, exactly, and then I will receive an order, and then that order can also be returned to me, and after 2 weeks or I don't know what period, I'm going to get paid. Like, how do you start that conversation? But it was daring because the guys were very daring, and it was very fast-paced. So when I joined, we're just getting out of a campaign called Jumia Anniversary, preparing into I think the Black Friday season. Yeah, so the pace. Exactly. I just got in and said, this is the environment. I mean, so look, you can only grow as a leader. This is a very important aspect. And you also need to cut yourself some slack, because the expectations of the organization to a good extent start to sit with you. Yeah. The ball stops with you. So a lot of decisions, or the pace of decision making in certain elements, is really going to be the pace of the leader, right? Yeah. So you definitely have to also cut yourself some slack as a leader, and know that you're growing, and every other time you have to improve yourself, you have to grow. But the challenges are immense. Definitely the challenges are immense. But the challenges are not what are going to hold you down, right? In fact, the challenges are only going to anchor you to do better, to grow, to have an attitude of, we do this together as a team. And the only way you're going to get the best out of people is when you value people, is when you see people, is when you recognize what people actually contribute to the organization. So your philosophy is only going to grow. It could be you're a very tasky leader. By tasky, I mean, you've been used to, because of, my input, the job gets done, because of my technical ability, the job gets done. But then when you begin to elevate higher, you now begin to trust the teams that you work with and believe that they can be able to deliver. You want to provide the tools, you want to provide the environment, you also want to provide, a feedback loop so that people are able to tell you and say, hey, look, we want to do A, B, C, D, but we are being blocked by this. So you have to give people the opportunity to be able to interact with you. But I feel that over the years with my kind of journeys, you grow into the responsibility, and you need to allow yourself to grow into it. And every other day, if you're improving yourself, I think you'll get better as a leader. So COVID was quite interesting, actually, and it's one of the pivotal moments for a business like Jumia, because then, thanks to the teams at that time that were able to become an essential service, which meant that we could be able to operate during the lockdown, and customers began to use. So COVID naturally limited customers' movements, so people had to actually find ways to go online to start to shop for essentials. But also COVID why it was also a pivotal moment for us is that COVID drove out what would say performance marketing. Performance marketing just before COVID, businesses were getting a lot of funding, because there was a lot of capital to be allocated, and Africa was becoming the new kid on the block. Frontier markets, where do we invest our money? How do we invest our money in these markets that are showing interesting economic fundamentals? So a lot of businesses were raising and using that money just with performance marketing, billboards, TV ads and all these things. So COVID comes in, and COVID was a reset, both in terms of the attitudes of the customers, but also in terms of the attitudes of the people who had the capital to allocate. Because beyond then, because a lot of businesses really had challenges during COVID, you'd imagine being almost out of business for 6-7 months. You're running out of money as a business because you had to pay employees, so people are doing layoffs. But also the capital allocators thought about it and said, now businesses that do not have proven models, do we want to allocate money to this type of businesses, or do we want to hold it back? So there was a bit of a capital dry up. So what that did for us as Jumia is that it helped us to refocus our proposition and localize our proposition and ask fundamental questions. Who are the customers we serve? Where are the customers we serve? What are the fundamentals that we need to develop as a business today so that in this market we can operate? And these are the questions that we started to answer. For example, just using Uganda as a demographic, we know that close to 80% or even more of people live outside of the cities. They live in these upcountry towns in Mbara, in Gulu, in Arua, and these cities have started to develop. But they do not equally have the same access that the people in Kampala have. Today, you could go to Kampala Road and find all these shops. When I go to Gulu or I go to Mbara, you'll still find shops, but you know that you're going to pay a lot more. So we figured these customers buy. A lot of our customers are located there, but the cost is very high. So how do we address that market? The other thing is that we built our logistics business, because the question was, how do you reach these customers when you're moving goods at scale, right? And then we innovated and said, it might be tricky to deliver goods door to door outside of the city, or Kampala, Entebbe, and Wakiso areas. But what we came up with is what we call a pickup station structure. Can we have a central point where customers can access our services, so that when they order for products, they can be able to receive them. So COVID helped us to really, again, rethink it and say, fundamentally as a business, how do we operate and how do we begin to grow so that we can eventually get into a point where we say we are profitable and a sustainable business. This is a big operation, and running this operation at scale needs processes, it needs systems, it needs expertise. When Jumia came into this market, there was really no blueprint at all. And that's very important, because over the years, we have built our own blueprint of how e-commerce would operate in a market like Uganda. And I'd give you a very good example. The way e-commerce would operate, let's say, in very developed economies in Europe or in the States is totally different. First year, the profile of the customer. The customer, and therefore the customer can barely afford. You can look at per capita income in a country like Uganda, it's significantly low. So how do you get products that customers can be able to afford? The other thing is also when you think about payments, right? In markets, very developed markets, people are using prepaid propositions because they have credit cards. So anytime someone is buying off platforms, let's say like Amazon, they prepay, because 99 or I don't know what percentage of their payments are going to be prepaid. Here, customers want to first feel the item, see the item, and then they pay for it. So our prepayment rates are very low. And sometimes you try to reach out to the customer when the agent is out to deliver and the customer does not pick up. So you still have goods that are being returned. So a lot of this has come with adaptability. And adaptability means localizing our solutions so that we understand the market. So what I really find interesting is when customers say, okay, Jumia, I want my product immediately. Of course, we are constantly improving our operations to make sure that our customers are happy with our services, and I hope we've actually been able to do some good changes that customers are proud of. But when you operate this business at scale with this facility here, then you should know that there are lots of processes, but we built those processes so that the customer at the end of the day receives and pays for exactly what they ordered for. I think what really ranks highly for me, really ranks highly for me is discipline. And the discipline cannot be traded off, right? And discipline involves so many aspects of the job. So for example, saying exactly what you mean and doing it, because your word becomes your bond at this level. You do not want to be in a position where you say A and then you're not able to deliver on that. So discipline, whether it comes to how you manage your time, because you have so many conflicting priorities and everyone wants a portion of your time. But you have to have, you have to be disciplined enough to know that this will take so much of my time, so I need to plan for it at a later stage. I'd not say there are any secrets, to be honest. Learn. Learning is how you grow. Be able to learn, unlearn, relearn. I think that's a very important aspect and you can learn from anyone. I learn a lot, by the way. I learn from, for example, when the delivery agents come in here and the times that you get to interact with people on the compound. And they give you a lot of, aspects of the business that would help you and you had never really imagined it. I interact with our partners, our sellers. I interact with the team. So I'm always learning new things about the business from them. Because they do help me in my decision-making process, but they also give me perspective that otherwise I'd not have gotten. So I'd say a discipline, very key. Your attitude it needs to be great, because that's the energy that the team pulls off. And definitely learning. There's nothing else without learning.
As he continues to lead, his story reminds us that in every entrepreneurship's heart, there's a spark ready to light up the future of Africa. New Vision TV. Stream smart, stream New Vision.